The man lifted a vase worth $2 million and smashed it onto the floor with all his strength. With a deafening crash, the incredibly expensive piece shattered into countless fragments. He reached down and carefully picked through the sharp shards, selecting two pieces that had relatively smooth edges. He wrapped the edges with strips of cloth and taped them together tightly. Before long, he'd fashioned a crude pair of makeshift goggles. They might have looked pretty rough, but for a man who'd been trapped in this penthouse for a full week, they could be a life-saving tool. The man slowly climbed the furniture tower he'd built up to the living room ceiling. With a sharpening rod in his left hand and a spoon in his right, he planned to chisel away the vent frame and remove the bulletproof glass blocking his path, so he could escape through the ventilation system and get out of this nightmarish place. Soon he'd carved out a gap in the frame, and the debris rained down on his face like snow. That's when his crude goggles came in handy, letting him keep his eyes open and work much more efficiently. But as he kept chiseling, he suddenly discovered a bolt embedded in the frame. He quickly tried twisting it, but the bolt was rock solid and wouldn't budge. Panic set in. He frantically pried open the entire frame with his knife, only to find 12 bolts underneath, holding the bulletproof glass firmly in place and crushing any hope of escape. In his desperation, he frantically searched through the penthouse trying to find a wrench to remove the bolts, but the owner seemed to have planned this all along. The drawers were full of useless kitchen utensils. To make matters worse, right at that moment, the broken central AC suddenly switched to cooling mode. The temperature began plummeting. By the time the man realized what was happening, the room had already dropped from over 100 degrees Fahrenheit to the low 40s. All he could do was wrap himself tightly in a blanket and stare helplessly out the window, with no idea what to do next. That night, the man huddled in the living room, eating cold food and staring blankly at the paintings on the wall. Suddenly, the security monitor flickered on. He turned to look and saw a janitor sitting outside the penthouse door taking a break. The man was overcome with joy and rushed to the door like a madman, banging on it with a frying pan, trying to get the janitor's attention. But the steel-lined door had excellent soundproofing, and combined with the loud noise from the vacuum cleaner, there was no way anyone could hear him. He quickly scribbled a plea for help on a piece of paper and tried to slide it under the door, but the door fit so tightly against the floor that even a thin sheet of paper couldn't get through. He threw the paper aside in frustration, grabbed the frying pan again, and pounded on the door with everything he had. Then he screamed at the top of his lungs, hoping the janitor would hear his cries for help. But even after he'd shouted himself hoarse and collapsed on the floor in exhaustion, the janitor never noticed anything unusual and simply took the elevator and left. After the janitor was gone, the man wrapped himself in the blanket and stumbled back to the living room in a daze, then collapsed flat on the mattress. Part of him wished he could just fall asleep and never wake up, but no matter how hopeless he felt, survival instinct kept him going. A few days later, when the food ran out, hunger wouldn't let him just give up. He had to rack his brain to find a way to escape. He unscrewed a chair leg and used his knife to slowly carve grooves in it shaped like a wrench. Then he climbed back up the tower, fitted the grooves around one of the bolts on the vent frame, and tried to turn it. But the fragile wood couldn't handle the pressure and immediately snapped in half, falling to the ground. Still, he didn't give up. He took another chair leg and tried a different approach, drilling a hole through the middle with his knife. He climbed back up and carefully tried again. This time, he worked extremely cautiously, and it took him an entire afternoon to finally remove a single bolt. Though small, that one bolt gave him hope that he might actually escape. In the days that followed, he worked on those bolts day and night. When he got hungry, he ate leaves from the plants. When he got thirsty, he drank the dirty irrigation water. When his makeshift wrench broke, he immediately carved a new one with his knife. After who knows how long, having dismantled every removable stool in the penthouse and suffering a broken leg in the process, he finally managed to remove all 12 bolts from around the vent. He successfully pulled away the bulletproof glass that had been blocking his escape. Before leaving, he wrote an apology letter to the owner. Then he painfully climbed up the tower and crawled through the ventilation duct to freedom. After being trapped in that penthouse for over 2 months, the man made a firm decision. From now on, he would never steal anything again.